Good afternoon. Welcome to the Jewish Policy Center webinar. I am Shoshana Bryan, Senior Director of the JPC and your host. There are a lot of you out there again today, which makes me very happy. And I know why you're out there. It's Iran. Everything, it seems, is always about Iran. And today we are going to deal with Iran, and we're going to do it the way we do things best. We are not going to discuss the battlefield last week, not how many missiles were shot down, not how many rockets were fired. Although I'm going to interrupt myself for a minute to say the U.S.-Israel security relationship looks great. U.S. CENTCOM did Americans proud. And the coordination and cooperation between CENTCOM and the IDF was extraordinary. So points for the military on both sides. However, militaries can only do what their civilian governments tell them to do. And that will leave a lot of issues on hold for the future. But we today are going to do what we do. We're not going to tell Israel what to do. We're not going to tell President Biden what to do, although we have some thoughts. We're going to take a step back and go for context. Iran needs context. Understanding Iran, dealing with Iran needs context. And today's guest, Professor Harold Rhode, can provide it. So first we'll do a short JPC commercial. We were founded in 1985 to present perspectives and analysis on foreign and domestic policies by scholars, academics, and commentators. You can find us on our website, jewishpolicycenter.org. That's jewishpolicycenter.org. There you can find our inside articles and sign up for email delivery. And you can find In Focus Quarterly, our magazine. The spring issue of In Focus is up. It's entitled War of Independence 2.0, and it's about Israel's ongoing battle for security. You can also find the winter 2024 issue up there as well, which is called The Awakening, and it is about what American Jews have learned since October 7th. That's jewishpolicycenter.org. We support, as the JPC, a strong American defense, U.S.-Israel security cooperation, and missile defense. You've heard me say that a lot of times, but if it hadn't been for those three things last weekend, it would have been a much grimmer picture today. Right now, our most important job is to support the legitimacy and security of Israel against anyone who would deny them. And now more than ever, we support the government of Israel and the IDF in their defense of the people and in bringing the perpetrators of October 7th to justice, to releasing the hostages, and to bringing an end to the malign influence of the mullahs of Iran for Israel's sake, but also to help ensure a broader regional peace. Our guest today is Harold Rhode, Distinguished Senior Fellow at the Gatestone Institute. Harold holds a PhD in Ottoman history from Columbia University, specializing in the history of Turkish, Arab, and Iranian people. He speaks Arabic, Turkish, Persian, French, and Hebrew, along with some Spanish and Italian. And he has studied and traveled extensively throughout the Islamic world, doing research in libraries and universities in Israel, in Egypt, Syria, Jordan, Iran, Afghanistan, Turkey, Uzbekistan, and Kazakhstan. He has put all of that education to very good use. He served as an advisor on Islamic affairs to the Office of the Secretary of Defense, Net Assessment, from 1994 to January of 2010. In that context, he went to Iraq in 2003, where he was liaison to the Iraqi opposition for the Coalition Provisional Authority. While he was there, he performed an amazing and I think underappreciated or almost forgotten mitzvah. He used his contacts in the Iraqi opposition and his contacts in Washington and retrieved the Iraqi Jewish archive that was found in the flooded basement of Saddam Hussein's intelligence headquarters in Baghdad. The archive, which is about 2,700 books and tens of thousands of historical documents from the Iraqi Jewish community, was restored by the U.S. National Archives. And they remain there today, safe and secure, and you can see them. So now I'm very pleased to bring you Professor Harold Rhode. Harold, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Shoshana, and I'm a little embarrassed about the introduction because I'm a simple Harold. You know me since 1978. We're old friends. and I think we understand each other. But thank you for what you said, and I'll try to live up to what you said. Where I can offer, I'm not a military guy. I was in the Pentagon for 28 years. I don't know the military. My, if you wish, specialty is that before I started to work for the Pentagon, was trying to find a way that Jews and Muslims could live side by side in peace. And I understood that what I needed to do is go and, if you wish, live a Muslim life. I'm a religious Jew now. I certainly wasn't religious when you first met me. And I once could pray better as a Sunni or later as a Shiite. And I used to, and I learned the languages. It again was part of my formal studies, but I also, I had experience out in the field, on the ground. I lived with Muslims. I enjoyed this. All I was trying to do was find a way to make peace. And I learned that the concepts that we have in the West, which are a lot of times, if you look at our founding fathers in the United States, they're based on what they call the Old Testament, which is the Jewish Bible, the values of Mount Sinai. These are not the values of the Muslim world. I wish they were. Just to give you a little appetizer here, let's say, the former ambassador to Israel, David Friedman, under President Trump, 2 hours before the signing of the Abraham Accords came up, they needed a name for it. He came up with the idea of Abraham Accords. Now, Abraham Accords implies that we're all equal descendants of Abraham. And that is the monotheistic faith, Islam, Christianity, and Judaism. There's only one problem. In most of the Gulf, that is the Persian Gulf, the Arab states there, they don't call them the Abraham Accords. They call them the Defense Accords. And that is how they understand what it's all about. That's not bad. It's just a reality. But we don't want to hear these things. If we would, we may ask a different set of questions. And now I want to apply this to Iran, where I went to university during the early and mid stages of the Iranian Revolution. I went to university in a place called Mashhad, which is 17 hours on a good road, even was then, between Tehran eastward, about still 4 hours from the Afghan border. And my studies were in Persian, the language, of the major language of Iran. And again, I was there and I lived with Iranians. I would eat with them, I would pray with them, and I was just trying to understand them, to hopefully we could find a way to get along. So what I want to say now is based on years of not reading books, although I did read many books, but it's experience in the Arab world and Iran and Turkey, but we're not going to deal with Turkey today. How do we understand what is going on in the Middle East? And I want to do this from an Iranian point of view. And two things are important, which we never seem to think about. Number one is how the Iranians see themselves. They are, like China, the center of the world. It's an unbelievably fascinating civilization, 2,600 years or so old. It is a civilization, and a highly urbanized civilization. And they have all sorts of words or terms for non-Iranians, for non-Persians, let's say. For example, they hate nomads. They look down on them. They're constantly were invaded by the Turkish nomads from their northeast and by the Arabs, which is what for them Islam is all about. The Arab nomads from what is today Saudi Arabia, the Arabian Peninsula, invaded Iran in the 660s. And by that time, Iran was an empire for 1,100 years. The book of Esther was during that time period in the Bible. Anyway, the Arabs, these desert nomads, which in Persian terms, Arabs are lizard eaters, they are rat eaters, they're desert rats. I am not saying anything personally against the Arabs. I'm telling you what Iranians say about Arabs. They look down on them. They basically look down on a lot of people, but that's one. The Arabs have no love for the Persians, for the Iranians. And so one of the major disputes that they have today is historical Iranian civilized culture, or civilized means urban, against these invaders, marauders who came in and forced them to become Muslim about 1400 years ago. Arabs look down on the Persians and they fear them. Historically, they have had reason to fear them. What Iranians learned to do to survive was they knew how to run empires. They had one. In the book of Esther, it says there were 127 peoples from India to what is today Ethiopia, and their traditions were all different. The Iranians knew how to do this. The Arabs did not. And so the Iranians said, or the Persians, look, we're all Muslims now. We will help you administer the empire, this huge empire that you created, but we know how to do it. And so do it our way. And that's how the Iranians got under the Arab skin. And the Iranians got under the Arab skin. And that was a major thing. This is number one. This is the unbelievably major issue that is behind what the Iranians, and in this case, the Saudis are Arabs. Now we have the second major issue. It's called Sunnis versus Shiites. Sunnis are about 88% of the Muslim world, and Shiites maybe about 12. Iran is overwhelmingly Shiite. It became Shiite about in the 1500s. And to this day, again, something that we have something called bygones be bygones. We try to put the past behind us. And, Shoshana, let's just, since I see your picture here, you and I had tremendous disagreements. We don't like each other, but we need to work together now. Again, we're friends, but this is just an example, God forbid, anything more. And so what happens? Now, first of all, Shoshana, you're a man, you're not a woman for this purpose here. So you and I in the United States or in Israel or whatever, we'd sit down and we'd say, okay, let's work this out. You compromise a concept which does not exist in the Middle East, the Western countries. You compromise a little, I compromise a little, Shoshana, or let's call you Shoshan, because you're a guy. And we get to a place in what we would call maybe in the middle, and we make an agreement. We put the past behind us. You don't forget what I did to you, and I don't forget what you did to me. When we put the past behind us, the Hebrew word shalom means bygones or bygones. It comes from the Hebrew word shalem, which means completeness. We put the past behind us. We march on together. We put our arms around each other's shoulders and we march on. Arabic has no concept like this. This is how negotiations work, and it's the same with Persians. And I wish that the American government would be willing to listen to this, because we would not have got ourselves into the unbelievably difficult situation that we have, where every time America gave in on the JCPOA, the 2015 agreement of that America made with Iran, every time we gave in, the Iranians upped the ante. They pushed it even further. How do we know this? I wasn't involved. I was out of government by that time. And they wouldn't have wanted me on that staff because I know something about Iranian culture. They wanted to make the Iranians do that is the Americans under Obama, and the same is true now under Biden. They wanted to make the Iranians do what we wanted. In the Middle East, the concept, when do you have negotiations? If you agree to negotiations before you have won, they say, he's weak. He doesn't have either the will or the ability to march on. Now is my time to defeat him. So I push harder. I strike. We see this as, there's no goodwill here. They don't have the concept of goodwill in their culture. Now, I've asked Arabs many times over the years who know America, who've been in America, who've lived in America for many years, the American concept of compromise, not the word, but the concept. I give a little, you give a little. My little example of tea from you before Shoshana or Shoshan. I said, can you imagine a concept which is similar? And I want to give you two answers that I got. Most of them said, it's absurd. How could you negotiate before you win? Because the winner then dictates the terms of how you're going to get along with the loser. All this is happening right now with Iran and America. And I asked somebody, and after about a week, the guy gets back to me, and he said, Harold, I have an odd way of putting it. There is a root in Arabic, and Arabic and Hebrew are very closely related, which is nazal, which in Arabic means to go down. Now, we use this root also in Hebrew for nazelet, which means a cold. And what happens in the cold? Things drip down. You can see that both mean, but it has a different meaning in Arabic. It's to get off your camel or to get off of an airplane or whatever it may be today. And the word that they came up with, the closest one, a guy who knows American culture so well, he said, tanazzul. You hear it, nazal. And you want to know what that word means to them? It means, if you'll excuse me, this is a polite seminar. It means a guy bending over for another guy. And I think we all understand what I mean without me going any further. Now, what happens? America has no concept of history. We don't teach it anymore. It's wasted. We need to do things like, is it DEI or whatever it is? Something like that. That's much more important than learning history. And Middle Easterners don't forget. I've seen parents yell at their kids in this part of the world. Do you think, do you think I don't remember what you did to me when you were 6 years old? We don't do these things. We let bygones be bygones. Here's the thing. America, President Biden, during his campaign for president, he trashed, if you would, humiliated the king of the crown prince who really runs Saudi Arabia, Mohammed bin Salman, that they call MBS. I will not use that because he is who he is, and that he is not MBS. He's Mohammed bin Salman. God willing, he'll be, from a Saudi point of view, the next king when his father dies. That's how it's set up. Now, when Biden said, you were the one who caused this Saudi journalist to be killed in the consulate in Istanbul, and shame on you, and we're going to make sure we're going to make you pay for this, and we're going to do bad things to you. That's what he said during the campaign. Well, Arabs and Persians never forget. They remember what happened when you were 6 years old. And so, but we in America, something you said last week, oh, that's history. Who cares? We have this phrase, nobody in the Middle East understands the concept, that's history. History is everything. And you may not do anything to someone because at the moment you can't, but when that person needs something from you, that's your turn to humiliate them. And when Biden came, tin cup in hand, whatever, begging the Saudis, came to Saudi Arabia and asked for more oil to be produced up there because he didn't want to do this in the United States. I guess that's environmentalism. It's another part of the world, so you can do that, but not, God forbid, America. Anyway, what happened? Mohammed bin Salman knew exactly why Biden was coming. So about a day or two before he arrived in Riyadh, the capital of Saudi Arabia, he announced that he would not give in on the oil issue. There would be no change in Saudi output. And the other thing is, the president of the United States, the most important country on the face of the earth, lands in Jeddah, which is in Western Saudi Arabia. And who greets him? Middle Easterners are very into formalities. Who greets him? The deputy provincial governor of Jeddah area, Jeddah province. Not Mohammed bin Salman didn't come. The king there is not in good shape. So you know, he didn't come there. That was from the Middle East, that humiliated the president of the United States. Now, let me see if I can tie all this together. Let's go the Abraham Accords. If you noticed, everybody's trying to figure what the Saudis are thinking. I want to know what the Saudis are doing. And let's just take some examples in the last week. In the Arab world, all over, I've been hearing some very interesting things. There are two alliances, they tell me, in the Middle East. One, and listen before you react, one is America and Iran on one side versus Israel and the Arab Sunni states. Most of the Arab states are Sunni on the other. Now, that may sound crazy to us, but everything that America is doing vis-a-vis Iran, which is giving in, shows them they can make an excellent argument that this is true. Now, the Jews here play both in the Arab world and in the Iranian world, historically, an extremely important role. That role is, and that's Israel and the Jews of America. Everybody is called Yahud, or in the same plural in Arabic, which means Jews, or Yahudi. They don't refer to Israel among themselves. They'll say the Jews this, the Jews that. And why is this important? And why is it important for what is happening right now? Israel is on occupied Islamic land. What does that mean? Any land that has ever been conquered by Israel, by the Muslims, must remain under Muslim rule forever. For the two-state solution, whatever that is, there's no difference by that definition between what is today Tel Aviv and what is Nablus. Both were conquered 637-38, so it's Muslim forever. Spain is Muslim forever because they ruled it from 712 to 1492, so it's Islamic. What is the problem vis-a-vis the Muslims and the Jews is that the first group that it seems that their prophet Muhammad encountered was the Jews. He defeated them in Mecca. He defeated them thereafter in a place called Khaybar, and there's a phrase that everybody, all Arabs know, Khaybar, Khaybar, O Jews, the army of Muhammad will return. Everybody knows this phrase through whatever. For Iranians, for Shiites, it's slightly different. A conflagration against the Jews in a part of Shiite thought is very important before their Messiah, their Mahdi, they call it, returns. He disappeared in the year 872, give or take 2 years, but he's coming back. This is what Israel is dealing with. Now, why is Jerusalem, for example, means nothing to the Shiites. But since it's the Sunnis who've been trying for so long to defeat Israel and failed, we Shiites, Iranians, will show you primitive Arabs, you have the wrong type of Islam. It's not that they're not equal types. I'm right, you're wrong. As Bernard Lewis, the late, great Professor Bernard Lewis would say, he summed it all up. I'm right, you're wrong, go to hell. That's basically the bottom line for that. Now, so, there's no doubt that the Iranians who they want to defeat Israel and show the rest of the Muslim world that we Shiites got it right, and that will prove or help prove for the Iranians that Shiism is the right form of Islam. And but how do you do that also? While you're doing the stuff against Israel, you're also, all your nuclear stuff, everything you're doing in weaponry is against the Saudis, the Jordanians, the Egyptians. I could go on and on and on, because these are Sunni Muslim ruled nations, countries. They're fiefdoms, basically, by and large. The Hashemite kingdom of Jordan, the Hashemites are originally from Mecca in Saudi Arabia, but they've been the rulers now for about the last, 100 years or so. And Assad land, which was Syria, same sort of thing. Anyway, what the Saudis are petrified of is that Iran, if it gets nuclear weapons or whatever, it will use them against Saudi Arabia. Why? Because Saudi Arabia is the center of Islam. It is where Mecca and Medina, the two Muslim holy cities, are located. And America is supposed to had an agreement to protect Saudi Arabia, but there have been all sorts of missiles flying over, and they have done all sorts of damage to the Saudi oil works, the whole oil production operations. And what did we do? Zero. Well, since America isn't prepared to defend them, that's, as Ron Dermer, the former ambassador in Washington from Israel, said, America's the 800-pound gorilla. If we can't rely on the 800-pound gorilla, if they're going to turn around, and someone once told me, a Pakistani general many years ago, when America and Pakistan were close, he said, we're always afraid that America is going to turn around and shoot itself in the foot. And it's like whatever happened yesterday is of no interest to America. But the Saudis know that the 800-pound gorilla is nowhere to be found. If anything, it is pro-Iranian, as I explained before. And if you can't have the 800-pound gorilla, maybe you can have the 250-pound gorilla. And that is the state of Israel. And that is why, and Israel is there to help and is helping. And they're both allied against Iran. I think if they both had their choice, they'd love to be totally under an American umbrella and an American alliance, but America's nowhere to be found. I've gone all over the place, but I think that is probably, Shoshana, you said you have questions from people. I think it's important that people have an opportunity to ask what's important to them, and I'll do my best to try to answer.
Okay, so we do have, thank you, Harold, that it's a broad picture and it's a necessary picture. And now we're going to try to pull some of those threads back into the middle. So somebody asked, you have the Iranians who are the enemies of the Arabs. First of all, do the Arabs feel as though they're being used when they go to war against Israel? For example, Hamas in Gaza, those are Arabs. Do they feel like they're being used by Iran? And secondly, if they look at Israel as the 200-pound gorilla or the 47-pound gorilla, is that always going to be a temporary alliance? So people get excited. The Jordanians popped up and shot down rockets Saturday night, and Saudis were shooting down. Is this inevitably a temporary relationship?
For Iranians, Arabs are like paper towels. Use and get a new one. They'll fight to the last. They'll support the last Arab to get killed, and we'll get another one tomorrow. That's how they do it, and they do it with their own Arab Shiites, even in Lebanon. Temporary. This is a very important thing. Arabs know how to wait. They have tremendous patience. So do the Iranians, and they wear us down. And I think they're very smart. And we get bored and we leave, and then they're in trouble. Okay. Well, how do the Arabs all understand this concept of these temporary alliances. If you'll excuse me, it's an American and a Jewish question, because we make peace. We put the past behind us and march on together, like you, Shoshan, and I were doing before. But that's not how they understand it. And remember, you need to go back into Muslim tradition to find a way to do it. If I don't mention Arafat here, because he said it bluntly, we just didn't want to hear it. He didn't lie to us. We lied to ourselves. I think it was 622 in a place called Hudaybiyah, which is not far from Mecca. Muhammad and his small forces had an enemy. It was actually his tribe called Quraysh. And he couldn't defeat them. And so what he did was sign a truce. And that is the best translation of any term the Arabs use for all of their peace agreements with Israel. And I'll show you, I'll prove it. But what we have here is that Muhammad signed a 10-year agreement, a truce, with his enemies, his tribe. And what happens in 2 years, he realized that he was stronger than them, and then he simply violated the agreement and defeated them and took over Mecca. Now, that is the thing. Now, when Yasser Arafat signed whatever he signed at the Oslo agreements, I think this was with, was it President Clinton at the time?
Yep.
2 weeks later, he's in a mosque in South Africa, and he is saying straight, people are asking, how did you sign this agreement with Israel? How dare you? We can't do that. And Arafat, who was unbelievably savvy, looked at him and said, all I did is what our prophet did. This was a truce of Hudaybiyah, of the place that Muhammad, that's our model. And as I said, people have, as long as we have common interests, they can constantly renew these agreements, like Hudaybiyah 1, Hudaybiyah 2, Hudaybiyah 3. You say, well, isn't that the concept of peace in some way? I guess, but what it means is the moment you disappear, it's gone. And then they can revert to the issue. That's why the Gulf people with Israel are wonderful. And the Saudis right now are wonderful. But I asked you to look, I want to ask you, but this is temporary. As long as Israel is strong, as long as Israel can help them, of course they're going to keep an agreement going. That should tell the Israelis something. Do you remember what the illustrious John Kerry, when he was Secretary of State?
Yeah.
You have to first get a peace agreement between Israel, a two-state solution. Well, what is a two-state solution? The fact is that in 1949, when the Arabs did not succeed in destroying the fledgling new Jewish state, the Arabs and the Israelis met in Rhodes, a little island. No, it's not named after me, and I'm not from Rhodes. They met in Rhodes, and they made all sorts of agreements. And the Arabs insisted that what, let's say, was the West Bank, which became eventually part of Jordan, and Israel, these were not borders, because that would have been recognizing the Jewish state, which they couldn't do. They were ceasefire lines. If you read the discussions in Arabic, I realize that's a secret language that people don't want to bother to learn. The Arabs never lied. It's all there. Now, that's that. So, vis-a-vis the agreements, as long as Israel remembers, and Israel, unfortunately, most of its political leaders don't really understand the other side. Israeli leaders, by and large, don't understand America. That's why people like Netanyahu and Ron Dermer are so unbelievably important, because they're basically also a large part. Ron grew up in the United States his entire life, until he made Aliyah and it came to Israel. And Netanyahu was in both places. And culturally, they get America. They understand when Israelis are very blunt. Do you want this? No, I refuse to do it. Americans, well, maybe we can find another way. And the Israelis don't understand these things. Culture is the key. It's everything. And the amount, from my experience, and my Hebrew is almost as good as my English. Israelis don't get it. They don't understand America. Now,
So
temporary
let me move you.
agreements. Yes, that's it.
Let me move you in a slightly different direction. We're clear that we don't understand how the Arabs and the Persians perceive us, and Israel suffers from a bit of that as well. Talk to us for a second, if you will, about China and Russia. How do the Arabs and Persians perceive them, and are they any better than we are at understanding what appears to be a kind of outlier culture?
Let's talk with Russia. Russia has amazing specialists on the Islamic world. Moscow, for example, today is between 33 and 40% Muslim. We don't, mostly Tatar and Central Asian, ex-Soviet Muslims. That's amazing. But they know how to keep things under control. They understand this culture pretty well, and they understand that what keeps them in line is this. I hate what I'm saying, guys, please, and girls. Oh, we can't use those words anymore. Anyway. The Chinese, look, I took, after I invariably say graduated from the Pentagon. I retired in it's 14 years ago. It was January of 2011, and I've done I spent a lot of time in different places, and I did 6 lecture trips in China. And what I realized is my wife was in Washington, and I called her at one point after 2 days. I said, Judy, if I ever had any desire to go to the moon or Mars, I think that's gone. I said, the Chinese are people just like we are, but they order their world entirely differently. What they were interested in hearing from me is about Islam. And they thought they could bring it into the system by bribing them with money. And maybe it's a good communist way of doing things. But I kept telling them it's not how the Muslims don't think that way. As Ben-Gurion, when he, before the state of Israel was founded or refounded, he was talking with some senior Arab, important Arab, Yan is the Arabic, notables, let's say. And he was trying to get them, look, we're bringing modern technology, science, medical, everything. And the Arabs said, thank you very much. We don't want any of it. If it takes us 100 years to get there, so be it. We don't want it. And this is not something that we can understand. The Chinese did not understand. Look, the people in Xinjiang, or as out there, they used to call it Uyghurstan, where the Uyghurs are. They're Turkic Muslims. That area was conquered by Islam, I think, in the 1100s or the 1200s. And so whom does it belong to from a Muslim point of view? It's Muslim. And the Chinese, I remember when we were talking about this, it made no sense to them. I said, I am not saying that it is or it isn't. I'm only describing how they understand it. All I can tell you is what we've seen what the Chinese have done is we're not particularly impressed with how they're treating their Muslims now. So they have a better understanding, both of them, than we in America. Come, let us reason together. And the Middle Easterners, oh, come, let us reason together. Fine, I'll kick you in the teeth. Then let's reason together.
Okay, but you have what appears to be a better relationship between Iran and China, based on money, based on oil exports, based on payments for those oil exports, than you have between, say, Iran and the United States. How do the Chinese do that? Is it all money?
Number one, it's money and common interest. The other thing is that Chinese culture is very similar to Persian cultures. They both have to deal with outer nomads, which Chinese call barbarians. Those are the people in Central Asia and already in the north of what is China today. And they are usually almost all, but not exclusively, some form of Turk. Uyghurs are Turks. And Mongols, these are nomads. And what they did was, the reason the Chinese built the Great Wall was to keep the nomads out. Iran couldn't do something like that. So they are already, for many centuries already, a friend of mine wrote a PhD on relations between China and Iran in, again, the 16th century. And he got good documents on both. He knew both Chinese and Persian. So he could do that. They understand each other. Here comes America. We believe that someone who learns English and speaks a very good American English is a closet American who grew up like we did with our values. I can only tell you that it is my experience in the Muslim world that the better you know English and the more time you spent in the United States, and some with a perfect American accent, they are the ones who've been most difficult with Americans during what we would call negotiations.
Okay, so
You don't want to know.
This raises even more questions. We always have more questions.
Good.
First of all, is it an overgeneralization to say that Americans don't want to know, that our government doesn't want to know? Are we entirely devoid of people who have some understanding of the fact that we are different than others? That's part of a question. The other part of the question is, if we are us and they are them, how do we prevent them from succeeding in, first of all, in the region? And secondly, one would have to assume that if they succeed in the Middle East region, they're going to start looking for the reconquest of Spain. So,
and they are, Shoshana. That's a very important point. If you know Arabic, if you know Arabic and you read what's on the net, there's a lot of discussions on how we are going to get Spain back. They call it Andalusia, Andalus, it's ours. That sounds.
So do the Spanish look at that and say, never mind? I mean, what do people on the receiving end think, and what do we have to do to prevent it? I would think if I were Spanish, I would not be part of any coalition that wants to be nice to Iran, but yet there the Spaniards are.
Please, the Europeans have forgotten who and what they are. They are now, they're not, there's no such thing as European identity. What it is Spanish, Portuguese, French, German, Italian, whatever it is. And they gave all this up for nothing. We're now Europeans, or at least they thought that is. Look at their currency. Look at what a euro looks like. It's bridges to nowhere. They can't put Mona Lisa, which is clearly a very European cultural thing, on the money. Why? Because, well, it's an Italian painter and it's in a French museum. So nothing, it's all empty. And so they don't know or appreciate their culture. I want to tell you that for years, when I first started to work with our mutual friend and an older brother to me, Richard Pearl, and you helped make that happen way back when, Shoshana, in ancient history when we weren't gray, say.
I was a child.
Well, you were doing a lot of good things as a child. Anyway, we differences. I'm sorry, Shoshana. I was saying something. I forgot what.
Wait, but the question is, how
Germany.
are we going to deal with them?
Okay, I went to Germany. I have a rudimentary knowledge of German, enough to get along, but not much. And I haven't used it in many years. But I do know Turkish. And we were interested in putting bases out, NATO bases, building in Eastern Turkey. And this was when the Soviet Union was around. And I wanted to know what the locals there, what their thoughts were. And the Turks didn't want us running around out there. So I went to Germany in 1982 for a few trips, maybe a bit more at time, to talk with the people from Turkey, because I could speak with them. I can't speak German. Now, at first, since I was an American government employee, I talked with the people in the German government, and they were interested in. They had all these posters from demonstrations, and what was important to them was cataloging them, meaning they didn't even know what language they were in. Some were in Kurdish, and so many of the Turkish citizens in Germany were Kurds, and I can tell the difference. I don't really know Kurdish, but I certainly can figure out when something is one or the other. And that's what they wanted to do. I said, listen, guys, please, these people are not going to leave. They're going to grow up in Germany, and you may solve an instant problem by getting workers for your factory because you're not having children because you're post-Christians. I beg Christians, go to church and have babies. It's the only way
Not
it's
in
going
the
to.
church.
Well, that they can do. That's
Sorry.
their business. I'm not a Christian, but that's.
Yeah, but we got to get back. But
Okay, what happened? The Germans said, we will, fine, we'll, you Americans are conservative, whatever. We will accept the Turks in our society. I said, okay, under what conditions? Well, they have to stop cooking with so many spices. They can't have this loud music, and they stop having so many children. I said, you can't do that. That's racism in the United States. How dare you say that? And then they said, you're not a melting pot. You in America are a melting pot society, but we're not. Why is this important? They missed the boat in Germany. And Angela Merkel brings in 1 million people, Muslims, and oh, isn't she nice and all that? Well, these people don't assimilate into Europe, and they know how to wait. And when they get critical mass, they make demands. More mosque, more of this. No pork imagine no pork in France, Germany, Italy, or Poland. I mean, it's not possible. Poland's a different story. They don't have Turks. They don't have Muslims. But everybody else, they don't want to know Shoshana. That's the problem. And if you don't want to know, so that's the problem. And so,
all right, so we get the problem. But now the question is, A, is there a solution? Or B, if there is, how do we get to it? Are we facing a time when you believe, and I'm asking you your personal opinion because yours is grounded in more facts than most people's, is Iran going to win the larger war, not the rocket war against Israel? I'm not talking about Israel and Israeli territory, but you're talking about a multi-front war against a lot of people that we know and like, including ourselves. So can we win the war? And if we can, how do we?
The only way we can win this war if we, facts. I don't have in front of me a cup of water, but if you happen to know, Shoshana, that was poison, and you say, Harold, please don't drink that. I know you're thirsty. And I insist on drinking it. What happens to me? It looks like water to me. It doesn't smell. It smells like water to me. The answer is I die. That's what we are doing. Either if we don't believe in our culture, I keep coming back to this word, it is the most important thing in the world. It involves how we do things. It involves religion. That is what keeps us grounded. The moment we don't have that, then they are winning, and they know it, and they're writing about it, and they talk about it, and we have access. It's great that America and Israel and all these countries have this ability to get all sorts of information. I'm not concerned about getting it. I'm concerned, how do you understand the information? And so much of the Americans, and unfortunately, it's been so much even here in Israel, and I'm in Jerusalem at the moment, are more interested in, oh, well, that doesn't matter. These are the things that matter, and that's how people make decisions. There is a marvelous a guy who grew up in Iran named Eliyahu Yossian, who is at the age of 23, I think, made Aliyah. He's a Jew from central Iran, a place called Isfahan, an unbelievably gorgeous city. And he basically describes it, look, what the Iranians just did to Israel with it must be right away. The only way to stop them is for the regime is you go after the sources of money. What is that? The oil infrastructure. It's easy to rebuild this stuff. And all over Iran now, you have all of these people. There are graffiti everywhere. Israel, strike them. I have pictures. I don't have an ability to show them, but I have them. I'll send them to you. You can send them to and I've sent you some pictures that went along with that article, which, for in America, there's no way of publishing them because it tells how the Iranians are thinking about things. Only when we accept that they think about things in a certain way will we be able to do anything to change things. And then they will win eventually because they're wearing us down. And we give in.
So we have a question then from a listener who says that I need to ask this question, otherwise I'm a coward. And heaven knows we can't have me be a coward here. Will anything short of vaporizing the Iranian government and the Arab states produce a peaceful world? That is his question. Do we have to go and take them out physically?
I would argue is then from the Iranian people, and I went through the early and mid stages of the revolution in a university in Iran. What you see is when they see power, and with it has to be the willingness to use it. I think we could go after the government. I wouldn't even worry about the nuclear program at the moment, because what happens? What are the statements that the Iranians are all over the place? And I've seen this even from when I lived in Iran. And in the history of Iran, it's filled with this. They say, please, you take them on and we will come out and finish the job in the streets.
Okay, very important point. I want to grab that point because we only have a few minutes left. Somebody else pointed out in the questions that Iran is actually a multi-ethnic and multicultural country. There are Persians and there are all kinds of other people in Iran. And the problem for Israel of Iran is not what one would call the Iranian people. There's a long and healthy relationship between the Iranian people and Israel and Israeli people and Jewish people. And you know that a lot of Iranian people are unhappy with the mullah government and unhappy with the form of Islam under which they are required to live. So I always go for a positive note at the end of a program. I'm going to ask you to try to be positive.
I can't be. It's easy.
Is it possible to go for the government? Now, there are some people in Iran who say, okay, you come in and we'll finish the job.
Yep.
Can they start the job?
They need to know they have outside support. That could be all sorts of things to help them. The people, I don't want to go into any of the details of these things. It is known. And the other thing is, if the people who are oppressing them in Iran, that is the mullahs, and there are some mullahs who are on our side, if you wish, we need to go back and be in the seminaries and worry about the people's needs, but not to rule, because that's against Shiism, by the way. Most Shiism, about 98% of Shia authorities historically, don't believe until their Messiah comes, should the mullahs be in government. Yes, they put it this way. I don't want to destroy the regime. Destroy Iran, because these people are our natural allies. Their culture is awesome. Of all the places I've been in the Muslim world, the one that still intrigues me, after so many years that I've been out of Iran, it's Iran. Because whatever you see is not what you get. It's beautiful. They say our country is so ugly because so much of it is desert, that we've had this we create beautiful art, and it is beautiful. And their poetry is simply awesome. Yes, all they want is to join, I would say overwhelmingly, the nations of the world. Do they want to eventually conquer the whole world for Islam? Yeah, but that could be 100, 200, 1,000 years from now. And That's not for us to worry about, right? Yes, that's the case. And the Saudis, the type of Islam that they have, look at their flag. It is a green background. It's a color of Sunni Islam. And there's Arabic writing which says, there is no God but Muhammad. God forbid, there is no God but Allah, and Muhammad is his messenger. And that is, and what is underneath that is a huge scimitar. And when you see these people, that's how Muhammad conquered. And then afterwards, they conquered the world. They want to get, that's what listen, if they want to do that, that's their business. They can have all the dreams they want. As long as there is a force which says, no, you can do, it's your business what you do in your place, but you're not going to come and tell me what to do, which is, for example, what is happening now in Dearborn, Michigan, where McDonald's now no longer has pork and they're having halal meat. Look, you came to America. No one asked you to come. You wanted to come. Fine. You have to assimilate into American culture. You don't like it? Then leave. No one asked you to. All of us, the language of this webinar, both you and I, Shoshana, are European Jewish. We're from generations already. We're not speaking. This is not in Yiddish. We're speaking in English. We want.
Okay, but I would say there's a big difference in Dearborn, Michigan, between people who want a halal McDonald's, which, okay, I don't care, and people in Dearborn, Michigan who say death to America, death to Israel. I think our bigger problem is not the cultural accommodation of Arabs or Muslims or Jews for that matter, but rather how they respond to the ultimate requirement of our culture, which is to say you don't say death to it. And I hope you agree with that. But if I had to ask you, if you were going out positive or negative here, are you going out positive or negative?
If America and the American allies, this area, everybody wants to be an ally of America. If America will stand up for its values and be strong, and when you want, for example, Iraq, I was very deeply involved in the whole Iraq issue. I didn't want America to get involved in the politics. I wanted the Iraqis to do the politics and we would do the defense. We had a chance. We failed. Don't get involved in the culture. Go in, take care, clean up, whatever, and get out. That's it. I don't want American troops all over the place here. They give these people a chance. If not, they're going to come and they will eventually take us over because they got patience. They can wait and wait and wait. And we in America, I want it now. That's not the way they think. You're welcome to live in America, but you will basic things, and culture includes religion. They want to look. I eat kosher. Other people don't. I'm not trying to enforce kosher laws on other people. If they want to do it, it's their right to do it, but they can't make me do their way of things. We're Americans and we do it our way. Yes, it's doable, but does America have the will to make this happen? And unfortunately, let's say in the Obama-Biden approach to the world, the answer is, well, I don't know whether they would say it, but I don't think they particularly have much respect for American culture. Again, the founding fathers, who are awesome individuals, but they're a bunch of fuddy-duddy old white men from the progressives, radical fascist leftists, I don't know, whatever it is. The positive thing is, and so much of America, which seems unempowered at the moment, if America, the goodness of the American people, the goodness of the people here in Israel, as long, don't make excuses. Go, if they do something to you, get them back. And then they will say, thank you. Now, you having been the winners, you make the rules. You don't want to kill people. You let them live their culture as long as it doesn't inflict itself on you. That's doable. The question is, do we have the will?
Stop there. So stop there. because we need to leave on a positive note. And I think what you've given us on that positive note, I would say it's a sort of shaky positive note, is that it isn't all lost. We are in a slump, and we may not be prepared to take care of our interests today, but maybe the Israelis are prepared to take care of theirs. And maybe that other coalition of the willing, which is Saudi Arabia and Jordan and Israel and some others, maybe they can hang on long enough for us to recover ours. And I'm going to stop there, Harold, for two reasons. First of all, because we've run out of time. And although my listeners tend to be patient, we have to deal with impatience. And because I want to thank you for showing us another way to look at this. I think you're right. As Americans, we tend to look at it from the US cultural point of view, but there's really a much bigger war out there. And this is not just an Israel-Iran problem, as the administration appears to frame it. Israel should or shouldn't, and Iran should or shouldn't. It's a much broader war, and we need to be aware of it, even if our government doesn't want to do anything about it. I think we're better aware of it today than we were an hour and 10 minutes ago. So I want to thank you for that, and thank everybody for listening. And we are off next week for the Passover holiday. So let me wish everyone who celebrates a Chag Sameach, and we'll be back in 2. Thank you very much for being with us. Thank you, Harold Rhode.
God bless America and God bless Israel.